What's going on, guys? This is Brandon, your trusted realtor, and I'm coming to you with another great interview. This series, we're talking about title company, specifically settlement, and what that means for you. So make sure that you, first of all, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell because that definitely helps me a lot, and I appreciate it immensely. But today, we're going to talk about title company, the pros and cons of it, who pays for it, the buyer or the seller, what does it cover, and did you know your porch could be considered public property? All of this and more is going to be covered in this video. So make sure you watch all the way to the end because it's loaded with information. Subscribe, follow, and let's go. I'm here with Sean Marble. He is a settlement officer with MidAtlantic. How are you, Sean?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing well. I'm doing well. I'm glad the sun finally came out. We got a little bit of...
Oh, I know. It's so beautiful. Yesterday, my mom came over to the house and grilled up all kinds of food, and I passed out on the couch. I was so fat and happy. It was a lot of fun.
Well, good times. Well, thanks for taking the time to join me. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about settlement and title companies. And I know you are with MidAtlantic. We've worked together and done some business together. And you are in a lot of different offices as well as
Yes.
a banker. So you are a man of many offices and sometimes pretty much many hats.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about MidAtlantic.
Yes, for sure. So MidAtlantic Settlement Services is part of Realogy Companies. We actually operate Maryland, D.C., Virginia as far as any title services. We can write title insurance in over 40 states overall through the various networks that we have. MidAtlantic is specifically for this region, but we have a pretty far reach, West Coast, up and down the East Coast. Midwest. So I'm myself licensed in Maryland, DC, and Virginia. So as you mentioned, I'm in all three quite a bit, especially recently with everything that's been going on. So yeah, that's MidAtlantic essentially in a nutshell, full service title company from deed preparations for folks looking to change title to retail purchase end user to commercial. Condo conversion deals and things like that. So we can pretty much do it all when it comes to real estate. So you all have your hands in a lot of different pots. Talk to me a little bit about the role of a title company and the role you play in a real estate transaction. Yeah, for sure. So the ultimate role of the title company is to make sure that we pass title free and clear. And essentially what that means is if you're a purchaser, we make sure we clear up any payoffs that need to be paid that are in the seller's name, transfer title to you, deed essentially free and clear without encumbrances from any prior owner, and issue a policy to the purchaser ensuring their ownership. So if they're ever challenged for, say, an old estate or a lien pops up after closing recorded against the home, we actually step in and we can represent that client and make sure that we clear those items so they have what's called marketable title. So if they were trying to sell their property down the road, they wouldn't have any issue doing so, given the fact that we've issued a policy on their behalf. So both the buyer, which is buyer choice for owner's title insurance, and then the loan, which is actually required. Both policies are issued at the time of purchase. The loan is to protect the lender's interest. With their loan, is a priority first lien position. The owner's policy protects the owner. And then we work with the seller as well to make sure we prepare all their documents, pay off their mortgages, any tax bills that need to be paid, make all the necessary prorations. So we kind of bring both sides together and we disperse all funds to both agents, loan payoffs, and any other items, HOA dues, first year homeowners insurance. So we're kind of the conduit and the escrow agent that takes all the money in, disperses all the money out, and then issue the policy on behalf of the purchaser. So that's really a lot of information. So you essentially work with both the buyer and the seller to really facilitate the transaction. So you're just like a different segment of the real estate agent, where the real estate agent does the preparation up front, does the research for the home, and on your end, you're really managing a lot of the money and the paperwork. Correct. It's a lot of managing. If you figure if you got two buyers, two sellers, and an agent on both sides, and the lender and their team, we can deal with quite a few people on each transaction. So we pride ourselves on communication, keeping people in the loop, because that's really the biggest thing when you're going through the process, is to make sure all sides are on the same page and know what's going on with the file.
I'm gonna start calling you the chaos whisperer, because that's what it sounds like your job. So when it comes to, you mentioned two options. You mentioned title insurance for the lender, and you mentioned a buyer's title insurance. Does a buyer have to get title insurance, and what is the purpose of that?
Yeah, the buyer does not have to get title insurance. It is their choice. They have two options, sometimes called basic or standard, and then sometimes on the higher policy premium, enhanced or Eagle policy, it's sometimes called. The enhanced or Eagle policy has many options as far as coverage that are not covered necessarily by the basic policy. Some of the main differences between the two are the basic policy. Essentially, if you're buying a home, let's say for $400,000, that basic policy amount stays at that number, $400,000, where the enhanced policy actually can increase in value over time, as high as 5% each year. So you can get that higher policy premium coverage without having to pay additional funds. And you also have additional coverages such as mechanics lien coverage if you're buying new construction. A mechanics lien can be a contractor that wasn't paid on a draw schedule, and they file a lien against the property, against the builder. Enhanced gives you added coverage for that. Enhanced also even covers you even after you sold the home. If someone comes back and tries to challenge maybe a lien or something, and they want to litigate against you, you actually have that added coverage even after you've sold the property. So anytime I open a new file, I think we have one recently, I send out the home buyer's guide, which gives a comparison between the two types of policies, so folks can make an informed decision and know exactly what's covered by each, because there are several advantages to the enhanced versus the standard or basic policy.
Again, so much information to consider. When you are a homeowner, and let's say you are a buyer and you have to make a decision, and you say, well, I'm looking at the dollars and cents, I'm looking at the cost, and I want to save money wherever I can. Would you recommend, or ultimately, let's talk about impact, making a decision as a buyer not to get insurance? What does that look like? What are some of the risks?
Yeah, I'll tell you one example that I had personally on a deal that I was working on. We did not represent the original seller in the transaction. So for our purchaser who was buying the property, there was an old estate that was not properly probated, and as a result, the seller, who unfortunately had not purchased title insurance, had to pay out $15,000 to a long lost heir. Because they had not purchased an owner's policy on their home. I always suggest to get title insurance. It's a one-time transaction. You're not paying this monthly or anything like that. It's the biggest purchase anyone will make as far as a home purchase. So it just makes a ton of sense. I'm a very risk-averse person, so I always tell folks when I rent a car and they offer me the rental insurance, even though I have my own insurance as a driver on my own car, that would probably cover me. I still get that step up in insurance because, it's not a problem until it's a problem. And when it is, you don't want to be caught, without it. It just really is not worth it to be underinsured or not have any insurance at all, especially when you're talking about a home purchase. So I've always suggested it. Me personally, when I've purchased homes, I've always gotten title insurance every single time. Even though it looks like there's no risk at all, we do our due diligence on every single transaction, but, there are things that can come up. There are people that can, record documents against your home, unbeknownst to anyone, after settlement. Misindexed documents happen all the time down at DC, and to try to clear those things up, you'd rather have someone represent you instead of trying to do it yourself. So it's really, a time value added thing, and then it pays for itself over time. And then the comfort of knowing that you're covered if something comes out of the woodwork is really assuring. So I always suggest it. I mean, basic versus enhanced. with a condominium purchase, a basic is, I think pretty straightforward to go with on a, and I'd say that because there's no survey requirement or anything like that. So you're just really looking at the four walls, and you don't have to worry about if you have fences or, a deck or something that was, built without proper permits. So basic is more than sufficient on a condominium purchase, but on a single family home or row home, things like that, I always would suggest, the enhanced coverage on that.
And so that's also a really good point, is conducting a survey. I think that's one of the functions that you also perform. A
Yes.
survey is essentially where you evaluate the boundaries of the property. Can you
Correct.
talk a little bit more about why that's important for especially
Yes.
first-time home buyers? Because a lot of home buyers think, oh, this is a $300 charge or this is a $200 charge. I can
Mm-hmm.
I can opt out of this and save myself $250 and go to Pottery Barn and buy that wine.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. No, you make an interesting point, actually, because we don't necessarily require it, and lenders don't require it, but it is something I feel is important because you have two types of surveys. You have a what's called a boundary or stake and lot survey, where they actually come out and stake the property. We don't see a lot of that in DC. We see that more in a larger parcel in some parts of Maryland and Virginia, and usually those come up if there's a question about where the lot line actually is, because the boundary survey is an exact survey. Whereas a location drawing, which is the one you had alluded to, between $250 to $300, that's a bird's eye view of your lot line in relation to your home. So it gives you a great idea. It's probably plus or minus, 6 or 8 inches with regards to the lines that are outlined. But if you have a fence and things like that, you can really get a good idea of if the fence is inside your lot line and you've got room to move that fence over, if so be it, or if the fence is outside or meandering on the lot line. And then as far as when you walk outside of your front yard, or your front door, I should say, there's typically sometimes a porch area. Sometimes that's public space in DC. Sometimes you actually do own your porch. So it's really good to kind of have a general sense and know, am I being taxed on when I'm sitting out on my porch? Is this, part of my actual property I'm being taxed on? Whether or not you're being taxed on it or not, it is private property. You maintain it as your own, but it's just kind of good to know and get that survey, so you kind of have a bird's eye snapshot of how your lot line is in relation to the actual structure of the home. So I think it's a great reference point to have. And even if you don't have a fence, if you ever do want to put a fence out, you have that survey on record to give to the contractor, and they don't have to go pull it. So I think it's just a good tool to have as a homeowner.
And with the survey, in that same vein, the reverse can actually be true. Is if you have a property and you purchase it as a buyer, and you
Mm-hmm.
find that a fence is encroaching on your
Mm-hmm.
property, or
Correct.
someone has built something or a structure that impedes your personal use
Mm-hmm.
of the property, that gives you awareness of that. Do you have
Yeah.
a situation of an instance where that's occurred to you,
Oh,
Zella?
for sure. Yeah, for sure. It's definitely brought up conversation with on a deal where a seller has to go to the neighbor and work out different things there on whether moving the fence or working something out, maybe even some material payment based on the use of the land that they're using. So I have seen those occasions happen, and the survey is the only way you would know that for sure. So without it, you would be going in blind and not knowing maybe if your neighbor's using 2 feet of your yard for their fence, which is, in DC especially, I mean, that's a big deal. So
Yeah, it makes a difference. So that really puts things in perspective as it relates to title companies. So
mm-hmm.
as we transition to your services as being kind of the chaos whisperer in the full scope of the processing, you're there really from beginning to the end, and you work with
Yes.
all parties involved. So I want to talk to you about what you're seeing now as far as transaction volume, right? A lot of individuals probably are thinking, I can't buy right now. There's the underlying reality that lenders have increased their underwriting requirements, which, by the way, there's a difference between a settlement officer and an
Mm-hmm.
underwriter, right? Because
Yes.
your job is the documents related to the property, and
Mm-hmm.
underwriter is all of the documents related to the individual who wants to borrow
Mm-hmm.
a loan. And
Hmm.
so in this case, how are you finding as far as volume? Are you finding that COVID-19 as like, are you playing like more golf now, or are you like in the office? I see you're in the office now, unless
Yeah.
you
No,
like
I
to
was gonna, I
incorporate.
was gonna say I've, we've been busier than ever. I'll be honest with you. I've been in this business since 2001, 2002, I'd say, and through the financial crisis and all kinds of different events, DC metropolitan area has remained strong through really everything. So I can't speak to other jurisdictions, but Maryland, DC, Virginia have been extremely competitive still, high volume still, with the interest rates being where they are, and the inventory still being very low. This is a very competitive time right now. So I think what COVID has done mostly is bring in, to the forefront, the serious buyers who are really actively looking and ready to, pull the trigger. And some of the folks who are not quite ready, I think, they're probably maybe on the sidelines because there's not a lot of open house, there's no open houses and things like that. And folks who weren't ready essentially are just extending that out. But for folks who were ready to go, I mean, it's been, floodgates have been open, with the interest rate environment and the competitiveness. I'm still seeing a lot of properties where, or hearing from a lot of agents where, they may be losing out because the contingency or the time frame of closing and things like that. So it's pretty much business as usual. I was really surprised. I thought May was going to be a slower month because April was surprisingly busy, but May was even busier than April, and June is trending to be busier than May. So for any buyers who are in the market right now, I would advise them this is a really good time to get in, because to have this type of interest rate environment and then this low inventory, you want to be aggressive. So anyone who's serious needs to be out working with someone like you, and because working with an agent actually matters. So with the one you ratified recently, I always congratulate folks for having their offer accepted because it's a big deal. It's who's your lender, who's your agent. I mean, those things are important when you're submitting an offer. So those things for buyers to take note of.
Yeah. Yeah, 100% agree. Have you also been seeing with offers that come across your desk that contingencies have been different in this time period than time before?
Oh
Are
yeah, the
people asking for
COVID-19.
more, or are they asking for less?
It's still pretty much the same as before, with the exception of the COVID-19 paperwork. There the addendums that are new now, but I'm still seeing stuff. Pretty much no financing contingencies. But I think ultimately you have sellers who are just ready to kind of get going. Because some sellers may be concerned about where the market's going to be trending towards. So some sellers you can see be a little bit more flexible in different areas. So just really depends on the area, the market, and where the listing agent priced it at. But the COVID-19, I'd say, is probably the biggest thing. And then with Maryland, that's not in relation to COVID-19, but the new Maryland escrow form that's required for earnest money deposits, that's a recent development, whereas we have to have that Maryland escrow form in order to take a deposit. So that's something that's kind of newish before the COVID thing had started really taking heed. So.
Wow. Yeah, so lots to consider. And I think we didn't define upfront what contingencies are. So contingencies are those protections that are written into your contract, and then those contracts are then communicated to you, the chaos whisperer, to make sure that those things are properly executed and followed. So it almost sounds like what you're seeing is that in some of the offers, buyers are foregoing the
Yes.
financing contingency, which is basically saying, I don't know whether or not my bank's going to give me money.
Yes.
So they're basically saying, hey, I'm pretty confident that I'm going to get this money. Just let's go ahead and close the deal.
Yes, correct. So it's really with a low inventory and a competitive buyer market. You have to be careful with the contingencies because as a seller, the seller is looking at it from their perspective. This is a way the buyer can get out of the contract, so they'd rather take less to no contingencies than more. So yeah.
Yep. So yeah, and so that goes back to something I think you alluded to a little bit earlier. Is when you're working with an agent, it helps. Those things help with the strength of your offer.
1,000%. Yeah.
Yeah, it helps you to hopefully, potentially, you can't insure anything, but gets you to a closer place where your contract will largely, or your offer will be accepted.
Oh, 1000% for sure. Yep.
Awesome. Well, Sean, this has been amazing. I appreciate you taking time on this
No, I appreciate it.
with virtually no humidity today to talk to me
I know.
on my platform. So with that, as Sean has given sage advice, now is an ideal time for buyers, if you are seriously thinking about buying, to put yourself in a position to win and to be successful in this very competitive real estate environment, whether you're in DC, Maryland, or Virginia. Again, I am your trusted realtor, Brandon, and Sean is your trusted settlement officer. Again, thanks so much, Sean, for joining us, and stay tuned and stay in tune for the latest in the DMV. Take care, guys.